Edmund Rice International. The team here in Geneva consists of 4 Christian brothers. It's Brian Bond, who is the Executive Director of Edmund Rice International, Kevin Mullen, who is from Ireland, Tino D'Abreu, who is from India, and myself, Terry Dowling. I'm from South Africa. I'm the newest member of the team. I only arrived towards the end of January, so I'm learning a lot, just like you will be learning a lot also. Edmund Rice International is supported by 2 religious congregations founded by Blessed Edmund Rice, the Christian Brothers and the Presentation Brothers. And to give you a brief history of how this came about, the 2 congregations had chapter declarations. One was by the Christian Brothers in 2002 to move to prophetic action through advocacy and works of justice. And then the Presentation Brothers in 2005, we will engage in advocacy works with our policymakers on behalf of people who are made poor. In 2006, Edmund Rice Board was appointed and ERI was registered as a public body in Ireland. And in 2007, the ERI team was appointed and it was based in the Franciscan International Office in Geneva. Then in 2011, Edmund Rice International became an NGO with consultative status at the United Nations. In 2013, Edmund Rice International gained public charity status in Ireland. And then again in 2014, the Christian Brothers Congregation chapter supported our work of advocacy for the voice of the people who are marginalized and all those that are oppressed. So that just gives you a brief history of how Edmund Rice International came into existence. Edmund Rice International also works with our partners, and the main partner is Franciscan International. It's also a faith-based organization, and we share office with them. They are the main office holders there. We share office with the Maris Brothers International and with Vivat International, and also with Good Shepherd International and Dominican International. But we also share with our support network around the world where the 2 congregations, the Christian Brothers and the Presentation Brothers, work, and that's in about 30 countries worldwide. And we have reports coming from our workers in those countries. So Edmund Rice International is a faith-based, non-governmental organization based in Geneva and New York in advocacy and human rights. The brother in New York is Brother Kevin Corley, who is also part of the Edmund Rice team. We focus especially on the rights of children, the right to education, and care of the earth, our common home. And this can involve a whole lot of issues like lack of access to education through poverty and disabilities, lack of legal status, human trafficking, early childhood issues, child marriage, also environmental degradation and care of the earth. We also are concerned with the rights of indigenous people, the rights of asylum seekers and refugees, the rights of people with disabilities, and any other concerns and issues that our network of people around the world might be concerned with and bring up to us for statements with the United Nations. So the final slide of mine is just a map of the world showing where all our countries are situated in which we are involved, the 2 congregations, the Christian Brothers and the Presentation Brothers. So that was just a very brief overview of how Edmund Rice International came into existence and what we are concerned with. I'm now going to hand you back to Tino and I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry, for that overview of Edmund Rice International And I just want to tell everyone we're so happy to have Terry here with us on our team. I will now take you through the next, to the first part of today's training. My name is Brother Tino D'Abreu, and I belong to the Indian province of the Christian Brothers. And I will soon be completing on the 2nd of April, 5 years as part of the Edmund Rice International team here in Geneva. So for today, what I'm going to start with is the word advocacy. It's an action word. When I say the word advocacy, what image or thought comes to your mind? Now I'm going to introduce another action word, charity. Again, what image or thought comes to your mind? Which word can you connect with better? Before I came to Geneva, charity was the word I could connect with better. I understood better what a charity or a service response to a need like hunger was. When I was based in Dum Dum, Kolkata, the brothers organized every evening a packed meal for the homeless who lived on the street just outside our walls. More than 75 people gathered every evening to collect their packed meal and satisfy their hunger. This was our charity or service response to their need. I am now going to give you around 30 seconds to think of a charity response from your experience. It could be something you did as an individual or as a group, or you are aware of someone else doing. So you have 30 seconds starting now. Thank you. Thank you. So as we go through our session today, I'm going to invite you to keep coming back to that experience. Keep reflecting on what you are hearing, understanding, learning today with that experience at the back of your mind. Now let's try and understand advocacy. To do this, let's ask, what is the difference between an advocacy response to a need or an issue and a charity response? What is the difference? And to help us, we are going to listen to Brother Brian Bond, the Executive Director of ERI, who has just landed at the moment in Singapore. But he's not joining us from Singapore, okay? He's left a video statement, as we sometimes do at the Human Rights Council. We deliver video statements. So he's going to share with us his experience of responding to a need, okay, through a video statement. So now I'm going to share the video statement with you.
So I want to clarify what we mean by an advocacy or a justice response. as opposed to a charity or a service response. And I'll do that by recounting my experience of working with students from our schools in Melbourne some years ago before I came to Geneva in what we call a street retreat. So I would take a group of students to a local parish where we would link up with volunteers from the St Vincent de Paul Society who conducted a soup van where they distributed unsold food collected from local shops, prepared soup, and then drove a van to a pre-arranged location where the food was distributed to homeless people, people living on the streets or in cheap boarding houses. At the end of that experience, we would have a debrief where the students shared and reflected on their experience. Students felt positive about their experience, as we all do when we do something good for others. But I would point out that whilst it was good and important that food and conversation had been provided for those who needed it, nothing had changed. And when the students returned home to their warm bed, their mother's cooking, those people would still be there tomorrow, the next week, the next month, probably the next year. And all of that leads to the why question. Why, in an affluent society like Australia, are people forced to live on the streets? What does it say about the way society cares for people who are suffering from mental illness? The conversation soon revealed that a number of those people we met were suffering from some form of a mental illness. So asking why is the first step in advocacy, which aims to address the underlying causes of injustice. And how do we address those causes? By speaking to those who have the power to make change, or better still, by empowering those affected to speak up for themselves. Usually advocacy is directed at governments, perhaps multinational businesses. For example, I recently joined a campaign and emailed directors of a Korean bank urging them to reject the financing of a proposed new coal mining project in Australia. Advocacy can take the form of letter writing, signing petitions, in-person lobbying, marches, demonstrations.
So that was Brother Brian Bond, okay, on the difference between an advocacy response and a charity response. And you heard him asking a very important why question, right? Okay, let's keep that in mind as we now go through the rest of this particular presentation. I'm once again going to share my screen with you, and this time I'm going to share a PowerPoint that I have. Okay, so in summary, we could say a charity response provides direct services like food, clothing, and shelter. Something like what Brian shared, and something like what I shared about how we distributed packed meal packets to the homeless on the street. But let me be very clear about one thing. I am not making a case either or. Rather, I'm stressing that both charity response as well as an advocacy response are both important. Charity responds to immediate needs, which is important, and looks for immediate solutions, which is also very important. But a justice advocacy response responds to long-term needs and looks for long-term solutions. The people lining up outside our gate to get their packed meals are the same people who have been doing it day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. So at this stage, I'm going to invite you to bring back to mind your experience of a charity response. Keep that in the forefront of your mind. Charity is directed at the effects of injustice. Effects, its symptoms, and it addresses problems that already exist. While a justice advocacy response is directed at the root causes of social problems and addresses the underlying structures or causes of these problems. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I've just been told that the slideshow is not moving. So, okay. So a charity response, as we said, provides direct services like food, clothing, and shelter, while a justice advocacy response promotes social change in institutions or political structures. Okay. This is where I'm asking you to think of the why question or the what question. Okay, I think I have gone through the slides. No, not this one. So, charity is directed at the effects of injustice, its symptoms, and it addresses problems that already exist. While justice or an advocacy response is directed at the root causes of social problems and addresses the underlying structures or causes of these problems. So this is where the why or the what question comes in so important, because it helps us to identify the underlying structures, the root causes of the problems that I need to try and address. So far, the meal program was a charity response. We needed to now ask questions that would help us to identify how we could turn that charity response to an advocacy response. Charity is often about private, individual acts, while justice or an advocacy response is more effective when there is public, collective actions. So at this stage, I'm going to give you 30 seconds now to ask yourself how, bring back to mind again that charity response to a need that you have. And ask yourself that why or what question that will try and identify one of the root causes to that need for which you had a charity response. So I'm giving you 30 seconds. Okay. Thank you. Charity calms things down, while justice or advocacy responses stir things up. We know from current and recent examples in Myanmar, Hong Kong, Belarus, where demands for human rights challenge those in power. Those who have an interest in preserving their privileged position can only respond with repression and violence. We are watching live the consequences of the war in Ukraine. how the human rights and lives of ordinary people in Ukraine in today's day and age are being crushed and trampled upon. But that may be a little far away for us. How about closer home? I'm sure you can recall current examples of threats and violence perpetrated on those who speak up for human rights or condemn injustice, maybe in your locality, maybe in your state. Jesus himself challenged the system in Israel of his time. He overturned the tables of the money changers in the temple that he saw as exploiting people. He condemned the Pharisees and religious leaders as hypocrites, false guides, a stand that ultimately cost him his life. And I think this quote from Helder Camara, a former archbishop in Brazil, sums it up well. When I feed the poor, they call me a saint. But when I ask why the poor are hungry, they call me a communist. So let's ask that why question. Let's stir things up. But let's do it at our level. Let's do it at a level that we are comfortable with going into. It would mean going into a little bit of an uncomfortable stage, but let's try and be comfortable with that.